and welcome to this episode on my App Tutor TV. This week we're going to be looking at retouching this female's face to make it more appealing. We're going to turn it from this face that has some blemishes over it, it's slightly not asymmetrical, and turn it into this gorgeous woman. Without further ado, let's get working. So the first thing I want to do here is I want to duplicate the layer that we're going to work on, just so we've got something to reference of what the image looked like beforehand. So with this layer selected as the only layer in the scene, just use the keyboard shortcut Control J, which will duplicate it, and then let's just rename this Retouch and press enter, and then we can turn off layer 1 if so desired. So first things first, I want to look at this image and see what I need to do. Well, having looked at it, I'm just going to use my keyboard shortcut Control R to bring my rulers up. I'm just going to drag a ruler out here just so I can see what's going on here, and just as I thought, I'm placing this ruler right down the middle of this this woman's face. You can see that although the eyes are pretty much level, the nose actually points off a bit to the right hand side, and that's not because her head is particularly skewed in any way. I think she's just got a bent nose. So the first things we're going to do is we're just going to do a bit of liquefying filtering on the image just to straighten things up, and maybe tuck in the jaw a bit here and there, and maybe lift the eye just here, because this eye here looks like it's drooping down ever so slightly compared to this one here. So let's get rid of our guides because we don't need to see them anymore, but I'll save them in the Photoshop file so we can refer back to them in a minute. And then with that retouch layer selected, let's go up to Filter, Liquefy. And the first things we're going to do is I want to just lift this eye up here. So I want to ensure that I've got quite a large brush, and I'm going to leave it at about 235. That should be enough. And I need to change the tool. At the minute I've got the bloat tool. I need to use the forward warp tool, and now we just need to change the size of it like so, and I just want to grab this eye and just lift it up without affecting the eyeball. Now you see there I affected the eyeball. Control Z. So what we need to do is just actually decrease the size of this. Now this might prove that I can't actually do that without affecting the eye. So what we need to do is we need to use the masks. So I'm going to select the mask tool here, and then anything I paint will not get moved. So I'm just going to increase the size of my brush here, and then anything I paint in here, i.e. the bottom underneath the eyelid, well, none of this is going to move. In fact, I can come right in here and just paint all of this like so. And then let's go back to our forward warp tool, and then when I lift things up, and I'm going to exaggerate here, you can see, well, it's not lifting anything up here. Perhaps we just need to paint it just a touch more, just into the bottom of the eyelash here, and then once again let's grab that tool and that's probably enough there. I'm going to just remove the mask by clicking on the none button there, and then just increase the size of this here, and I want to just grab the nose here, so I make sure that the center of my circle is right on her nose, and I just want to bring it this way slightly, and at the top here like so. I'm going to increase my brush even more. Maybe that's a bit too much. About 400 should do it, and then I'm just going to pull the jaw in here, and then I'm just going to come back. I'm just going to pull back the edge of the image just so we don't lose that. Once again, come to the side here, and then once again just pull the edge of the image back in like so. Once I'm happy with that, I'm going to click OK, and then we can just turn this layer on and we can just compare these here, and you can see How? I've just straightened the image up ever so slightly, tucked the jawline in a touch, and just lifted that eyelid up on the right hand side. So we can see we've got a little bit of the background coming through here, but putting the background layer on actually hides that. So we'll just leave that on for the second, otherwise it could become distracting. The next thing we to do is to look at the skin blemish she's got on here, and we'll use the tool in here, which is the spot healing brush. Now this is pretty new to the Photoshop toolset. It came out a few releases ago, and it used to have the healing brush tool, which is very much like the clone tool. And what you need to do here is you sort of specify an area that you want to clone or copy from. You alt click and then you go to where you want, and it gives you a preview of what's in here, and then I can click and stamp it in there, and it does an okay job. But in this circumstance I'm just going to Control Z, and what I want to do is I want to do all the changes on a separate layer, just so I can see what I'm actually doing. So let's create a new layer, and it creates it above here. We'll rename this to Skin, press enter, and then what I need to do is I need to ensure that when I'm doing the particular spot healing here, I am using the check up here for sample all layers, because if that was turned off and I started trying to fix this, you'll see, well, nothing happens to that particular little blemish there, and that's because, well, I'm sampling nothing. So you need to make sure that all layers is on, and then it'll sample the layers below it. So let's just start touching this up, and all you need to do is go over the areas and just click. Sometimes you need to draw a line, and we just go through this and try and remove as many of these blemishes as possible, and you'll see that Photoshop does a remarkable job of removing any blemishes on the skin. Now we don't have to be too precise, because we're going to use another method in a bit to get rid of. Now you can see, just need to be careful around here where there's high contrast areas. I'm going to remove this blemish here. There's quite a few little blemishes around the cheek here, and we want to make sure they're all nicely squared away. There's some down the bottom jaw here, to the right of the lip. And it's just a matter of clicking away here. And when you think you've got to where it's sort of imperceptible of anything else that you're doing, we can have a quick look at actually what we've done. So this here is the layer that we've changed, and you can see all the different blemishes that we've removed. So if I leave this one on and turn this off, well, you see quite remarkable the difference, the blemishes that we've removed. Now it isn't perfect, and we've still got a way to go, but once we get to a position up here, and there's just one here on the nose, you can see, which that's not doing a very good job of it, and that's a bit better. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to soften the skin, but before that I just want to check on the lip here. You can see we've got a little bit of a blemish on the lip, and every time I come to do it, it's not quite doing what I want. So I'm just going to zoom in here. Let's scroll down to the lip, and what I want to do is I need to perhaps just decrease the size of my brush. Sometimes that's enough to do it. In this case it's not quite working, so I'm going to use the healing brush tool, and once again I'm just going to decrease the size of it. I need to ensure that I sample current and below, and then just come in here and we'll choose our source this position here, like so, and that's done that nicely. So let's Control 1 just to zoom to the maximum view. Let's turn on that background layer, and although I've done all these and done them sort of non-destructively, what I want to do now is I want to blend these two together, because it's quite important that the next step that I do is that I sample all these two layers, and that the method I employ you will not be able to. So we need to sample all of these. So let's just select this one as well, and then I'm going to right click and merge layers, and it merges these layers here. And then I'm going to apply a filter directly to this layer here. I'm going to use the camera raw filter. So here's camera raw, and the filter I'm going to use is the clarity filter here. Now you'll see if I punch this all the way to the left, well, it really smooths the skin out. The problem I got is that when I come back in to here, well, I'm left with that. There's not a lot I can do. So I'm just going to Control Z, need to Control J to duplicate the layer. We'll leave that as skin up there and just change this to smooth. And then with this selected, let's go back up to that filter, to the camera raw filter. Let's push the clarity all the way. I want it to be about 80, and that's the level I'm quite happy with, and then click OK. And then what I want to do is I want to apply a mask to it. Now I only want the mask to reveal certain parts of it, so in this case here I need to block out all of that layer. So I'm going to press Alt down on my keyboard and select the mask here, and that puts in a black mask. Now if you don't know anything about masks, anything that's black it blocks out, and anything that's white it'll show through. So with the mask selected, I can get my brush tool, and it's a bit large at the minute, so let's just change the size of that. And I could use Alt on my keyboard just to adjust the size of it, like so, and up to feather it. And you'll see that I've got it on 10%, which is just what I want. And then all I need to do is I can start painting in fact, let's just bump that up to about 30%. And any areas that I will paint in here, and I need to make sure that I'm painting in white, so let's just press D for our default colors. Anything I start painting in white will start revealing the underlying clarity filter layer that we applied earlier. So as you can see, I'm coming up here, and you can see that the white areas that I'm starting to paint are starting to fade nicely. Perhaps just decrease the size down here. I don't want to remove any of the detail on the lips. And even on the eyes, just in certain areas down here. So I want to try and keep the detail on the eyes and on the eyelids. Perhaps just in here I could just smooth this out ever so slightly. Right in here, try and avoid touching the eyelashes. Maybe just on the top of the lip here, and on the nose, try and keep the edge of the nose nice and sharp. Perhaps in here underneath the jawline. Try and keep some of these little hairs here just to create the realism that this is indeed a real image and not a touched image. So okay, we've got that far there. Let's just have a look at the difference we got. So you can see we're really starting to touch it in here. Perhaps we could do with a bit more underneath the eye here. Just get rid of these slight little wrinkles under here. Perhaps a little bit more up on the top of the forehead here, which is quite bright because of the glare from probably the flash that was used. Good, that's looking great. What I want to do now is I just want to have a look at the eyes and remove any blemishes that we have in the eyes and maybe brighten them up slightly. So let's just Control plus on my keyboard to zoom in. Now this isn't a very high resolution image. You see we're at 200% here, but it will serve our purposes. I'm going to use a different tool here. I'm going to use the patch tool. And you'll see we got this little black line here, and it's almost like, I think it's an eyelash that's sort of come in. But what we can do is we can just select around it like so. And then when we drag this off and put it to a different position, Photoshop samples it and changes it. What we need to do is make sure that we're not using the skin smooth layer. We need to use this layer here, hence why nothing happened there. So let's circle this round once again. Let's just drag this off. Now you see you're getting a preview of what will come in there. Now don't be alarmed, because Photoshop will then blend that back. And let's go over here and you'll see it's done quite a nice job there. And there are a few other little blemishes in here. Let's get rid of this one up here. Okay, that's looking a lot better. It's just one little thing here, and then we're going to lighten the eyes. So once we've done that, let's get the lasso tool and let's just do a marquee around our eyes here. So I'm just going to draw down here. Like so, and then I'm going to use Shift on my keyboard and I'm going to be able to make another one. So this one's a little bit more difficult because it's going to be in two separate parts. I'll use Shift again to add to my selection here. Cool. Now that we've got our selection, let's go and adjust our hue and saturation in these particular selected areas. Just a point before we go any further, if you're having trouble selecting what you got here, say you accidentally select too much, well, all you need to do then is hold the Alt button down and it'll remove any bits that you don't need. So say for example this bit up here is just a bit too much, just holding the Alt button down and then redrawing it, and then of course holding the Shift button down will be able to add to that selection that you got there, like so. In fact, we could probably just come under here a bit more. Okay, once we've got them selected, let's come down to our adjustment layer here and let's click on Hue Saturation, and it gives us an adjustment layer. And first thing I want to do is I want to just move the saturation down just a touch, like so. Now you see at the minute it's below the soften or the skin smooth layer, so let's just move that above. We get the thick white line and then let go. So I also want to use the mask I've got here to increase the brightness we have within the eye. So all we need to do is hold down the Control on our keyboard and then click on the mask we got here, which is the selection we had. And when I click on that, you'll see that it reselects the selection we got here. And then I'll just adjust the curves, and we come up to here where the curves are, click on that, and then I can just click and drag up here. Obviously if you go too far it'll look ridiculous and be way too bright. So let's just bump this up enough so the eyes are a little bit brighter. So about there should do us. The problem we got now is this is just way too harsher an adjustment. So what we need to do is we need to come into the properties here and we just need to feather that brightness layer we got there, like so. That's probably a good amount, and then just close that down. Let's just zoom out a bit here to Control minus and see where we're at, and they're looking a lot brighter now. The next thing I want to do is I want to increase or change the brightness of the actual iris of the eye. We're going to use a combination of dodge and burn to do that. So let me just click my selection tool here, and the first thing I need to do is need to create a new layer which we're going to do that on. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key when I click on the new layer here, and it shows up the dialog box here, and I'm just going to type in here brighten eyes, and then what I need to do is I need to change the blend mode in here from normal to overlay, and then I'm going to fill it with a neutral overlay color of 50% grey and click OK, and you'll see that comes in like so. Okay, so let's just zoom into the eyes here. So let's just Control plus and zoom in a bit here, and I want my paintbrush tool, and obviously I need to decrease the size of this, because the first thing I'm going to do is the thicker line we have around the outside of the eye here, I'm just going to darken that down a bit. So I have my layer selected here. I'm going to change this to around 40%. I'm just going to tap 4 on the keyboard, and then with my black color selected, I'm just going to start drawing around. In fact, just make this a little bit smaller still. Now I'm going to Control Z that because it's not quite what I want. Just decrease the size of that even more. Now don't be worried about it coming through too dark, because we're going to change the opacity for this layer in a second, but just want to try and get this as smooth as possible, like so. I'm happy with that. Not that. Cool, alright, I'm happy with that, and then I'm just going to tap the X key just to change the colours here from black to white. Just increase the size of my brush, and then I'm just going to paint on the inside of here, the bottom half of the eye, like so. Once we've done that, all I'm going to do is just change the opacity of this layer down a bit to around maybe 56, that sort of percent, and then just Control 1 to zoom out, and you can see that really makes the eyes pop out and look really good. So let's have a look just by deselecting it. We're probably a bit too much here. Let's just drag this down a bit more. Even more still, I think. Don't want to overdo it. Yeah, that looks a lot better. Let's just check our curves here, and I suspect that they're probably just a little bit too bright. So instead of going in here and adjusting our curves again, all we need to do is select this layer and then just change the opacity of this layer. Change it down to about 60%. That should do us, and we can just check that again. Yeah, it's very subtle in there. The last thing I want to do is I just want to increase the rouge on her cheeks here, just to make them a bit more red, and we'll do that by creating another layer. Come up to the top here, and then we're going to have this as an overlay layer as well. I'm going to ensure that I choose my paintbrush, and then I want to choose sort of a pinky hue we can see here. We're going to need to increase our brush drastically, so I want a very soft fall off of a brush about this big here, and change the opacity all the way down to, well, about 5, and then I'm just going to just gently just draw in a bit down here, just dragging it down like so. Perhaps that's just overdone a touch, so we can just drag the opacity down and then just have a look. And you can see the problem we've got is it's actually bled into other parts of the hair here. So let's grab the eraser tool and ensure that we've got a reasonable hard edge here. It's got up to about 60, and then I just want to come down here with this layer selected, layer 2, just come down and just remove any of the rouginess away from the side of the hair here. We just need to increase this actually. And we can tell it's really sharpening up that edge around here, because we can start to see the sharpness in this image here. Like so, and there's the very last thing we need to do is this little black we got behind here. We just need to erase that. So I'm going to use the paintbrush tool. I'm going to sample the color that we've got in here. So use the sample brush. I'm going to sample this white color here, and then with the paintbrush tool I'm just going to come in and I'm just going to very quickly paint on the skin layer here. I'm going to paint in fact, we need to make sure that our paintbrush is set at 100%. Like so. And that is our completed image. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly flatten all these layers here all the way down to the bottom. So I'm going to shift those, I'm going to merge those layers, and then we can have a before and after effect of how our image now looks.